Hello, you beautiful people, and welcome to the return of You, Me, and the UKTC, the show in which we analyse all of the UKTC missions so you don't have to. In each episode, I'm going to be talking through the mission, and then in terms of the map, we're going to be thinking about the shooting lanes and angles. We're going to be thinking about the flow of the game and what sort of points we should be thinking about as we play this mission. And then we're also going to be thinking about what to consider when you're deploying your army. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so today we are taking a look at mission 3, which is Hidden Supplies. Best known for the fact that what it does is it adds 4 objectives across no man's land rather than the traditional 3. In the most recent rule set, there is now a very special aspect to this mission which can completely screw you over, which is that you do not get primary for holding your backfield. As you can see here, it says the player whose turn it is scores as follows. They control 1 objective marker not within their deployment zone, gets you 5 points. 2 objective markers, 10 points, and then more objective markers than their opponent controls, an additional 5 points. So what does that look like on the battlefield? Well, as we can see here, we've got a beautiful diagonal line straight across the board, and those are our 4 objectives that we're going to be holding. So in order to score primary in this mission, we're going to have to do things a bit differently. First of all, we need to make sure we are always holding at least 1 objective, which is not in our deployment zone. If we don't do that, we're going to score no primary, and it's just a game over with, right? So that means that you need to pick either the top left-hand corner or the bottom right-hand corner as your natural expansion objective. Now, if we take a look here, the bottom left-hand corner, you can, in fact, actually hold it from a hidden place. Now, you can't get a huge amount of OC on there. I think it's approximately 3 OC that you models that you can kind of get on there. If we just move these across, so you can kind of see it's 3-ish there. You might be able to squeeze a 4th. I'm not entirely sure. Just double check that. Just going to move that out there. But it does obviously mean you have to be up against the wall, which means you are chargeable. Something to bear in mind. You can't hold it an inch away from the wall. So that is the logical place to be your natural expansion. And so this is the one you're going to try and lock down and hold. So that if you do manage to do that, potentially, for example, if you've got some 2 OC models, get 3 of those on here, that's 6 OC. They can't just dump a 5 OC unit, which is quite a traditional style of unit, just on there and take it back from you. So try and get at least 6 OC here just to make it harder to be easily knocked off from. Trying to lock down one of the middle objectives is obviously going to be incredibly hard. It's something that's more likely to happen once the initial kind of like trades have happened and someone gains an advantage, or someone like kind of like full sending and just swamping and putting loads of pressure and the opponent's having to fight their way out of trouble. That's when those might get held, but it's quite rare. And then from the green player's perspective here, this one here, now this one's an interesting one. We recently ran a workshop and we kind of discussed the fact that when deploying, this is more the natural area that you're going to feel like you want to deploy. So surely you then want to be running over to there and holding that down. The problem is pretty much wherever you are here, you're going to get shot at. Because if we're looking at measurements, we're looking at measurements from here to there is, it's 12 inches, right? So let's say you've got a jump pack intercessor unit. I can move 12 inches and I can just get just short of the objective. And then sure, I can then make a charge in there, but that's a 7-inch charge just to try and get in there. Anything that's moving around here is essentially, this is just a dead zone of getting shot at, isn't it? Which means that trying to pivot your army around this way and lock down this objective is actually quite tricky. Obviously, you can try and hold it from here and you can be safe up here, but you're still going to get shot from here where they've probably got things deployed. So although this isn't great for sticking stuff up around this area, realistically, this is the area you want to be holding. And I have seen so many games where someone just puts them, some Marine player just puts their Combi Lieutenant piece there. And so if we're a green player, imagine your opponent puts a Combi Lieutenant there and says, deal with me. Well, I'm now going to have to throw units over there just to try and deny the primary, or got to try and get round here, which is going to take 2 turns, and in order to get around there to shoot. So yeah, we're in terms of this battlefield, we're trying to think about scoring at least one hold, which is 5 points. If you can get 10s, that's awesome. We just need to be really careful that we're not letting our opponent get a hold more. Now, just because we're not having to hold our home field for points doesn't mean that doesn't contribute to the hold more. So if you go, oh, whatever, I'm just going to get 5 points and hold this, and your opponent holds their home field and the natural expansion, they're now getting a hold more. Okay, so if you have something sticky, that's really good for this. But yeah, just bear that in mind. But what you can already see is with all of these so far out, unless one person is dominant in this particular matchup, then it's very likely that it could be quite a low scoring primary game, which again additionally means that the person that goes second is probably going to get a 15 if they conserve their resources. So, sound like a broken record, but what this means is that the player who's going first in a general stable-ish defensive game, the person who's going second wins. So the person going first is going to have to be aggressive. Right, let's dive into those shooting lanes. We've often spoken about on the UKTC maps so far the idea of strat reserves getting to shoot into the home field. And oh, look, what a surprise, we've got that here. Yeah, if we're deploying here, then if our opponent can strat reserve and come in here, then all of a sudden this is a pretty terrifying line all around, kind of like here. Those aren't straight lines. Oops. So that means that we have to be really aware of that, and that means we do need things here in this sort of position to block off that kind of space. Okay, let's get rid of those gross lines. So, what other lines do we have? Well, this one coming down here is reasonable. Okay, so as you can see, you can get a line all the way down here, which is quite tasty. There is a line coming through here. From here, you are going to get a line across to about there. Okay. There is a line, so if we try and measure out a line here, okay, you can see that actually it gets blocked off. So you are safe from here. Okay, so that cuts through there. So therefore, we can see that that's the edge of this piece of terrain, and that blocks us. So you can't be seen down that line. So that's good to know. Other than that, there's obviously, as you said, there's the crossfield kind of like lines, and you just got to be careful around this area. Again, if you think you're safe here, well, you might not be if they come down there. But those are the general shooting lanes that we've got. So how does the flow of the game look? Well, as we've already established, going second is a huge advantage. So if you're going first, you're going to be looking to push out. It is imperative that you are scoring some primary. So deploying something here. Having some sort of infiltrating unit that can start up here is going to be really great. Now, if you feel like putting a second unit of infiltrators in this sort of area, so be it. Obviously, you have to be aware that they are going to get charged and probably dealt with quite quickly. So unless you're planning on a really impressive push down this side of the board, then actually it's probably not worthwhile sacrificing a unit. The reason you might do that is because you want to try and lock them in. So, for example, when I played Death Guard, one time I had my Potswalkers, and they were all lined here to stop Votan trying to scout forward and push forward into this area. So I went first, and I was able to move across, and I just move block this area of the board just for one turn with that unit of Potswalkers. And that is absolutely viable. If you took 5 scouts, I guess you could kind of string them across here, and then if you go second scout them back here, you're forcing your opponent to deal with it, and then get charged by some jump pack intercessors potentially if they've dealt with it in combat. That sort of thing is fine. Lots of people will deploy something here and then move it across to here. So if you can block that off, then hey, actually you might stop them from getting that 5 early on. Might be worth sacrificing a unit. It does depend on your style of army. But in terms of the flow, if we're thinking about point scoring, it's going to be really hard to score 10 points in this mission unless you've got a clear advantage. And so that's only 4 times 5 is 20, right? So we're already looking at quite a low score. Getting any sort of hold mores is going to be really powerful. If you're going second, you just want to play the primary denial game and keep your resources. Like genuinely, if you go second and just keep denying primary for 4 turns, concede 4 units, throw away 4 or 5 units to do that, and then final turn go across and score your primary points of 15, like boys win the game, right? So the flow for me has got to involve, if you're going first, you need to pick a spot to push out from. If you're going second, you're trying to play the primary denial game, consume as fewer resources as possible so that you can have a big primary score at the end. So when it comes to deployment, then we've got to be thinking about, well, where are we trying to hold it? As I said, there is a bit of a contradiction here because this is the logical place to put a lot of your forces, but most likely we don't actually want to be moving that way to secure it because we just get shot. This is kind of the place to secure. So any sort of infiltrating unit, I would recommend going there. I think that's a really nice place to put it. And then we can kind of go from there and have stuff here. This is quite a good thing because you can come across to there. So for example, if you took a bloat drone, you could advance it 10 plus whatever. Let's say you get to there, and then next turn you can kind of like advance and come across to here. Probably a bit far. But then you can be kind of in this position, turn 2, and you're shooting down there. And I think quite often when we start to deploy as a player, we think, oh, these are the safe spots. But next step is actually thinking, well, where am I trying to get to in my first turn? Because if I just deploy here, for example, that's a nice hidden spot. I'll just deploy my Myphitic here, for example. Or quite often people might put like 5 jump pack intercessors or something. And then it's a matter of thinking, well, where can this actually go? Well, if I go, cool, I can move across to here. But I mean, that's fine. Okay, I can't, if I'm here deployed, I can't actually get over here without a 3 on my advance. So then you might be thinking, well, how can I cut this line here? Can I deploy here just to try and be a bit safer and a bit closer and that sort of thing? Yeah, so if you are taking like jump pack intercessors and you're planning on denying your opponent's primary by just throwing 15 jump pack intercessors over here for 3 turns in a row, then hey, you know that 12 doesn't quite make it, so you're going to have to be advancing onto that each time. Okay, so it's that sort of having that plan, especially if you're shooting units. Where do you want your shooting units to be turn 2, and how are you going to get them there? So as I said, if I deploy Plague Burst Crawler here, for example, or any sort of tank, and I move 10, that gets me to about there. Okay, cool. Well, that isn't safe. Any shooting can just come out here and shoot there. I can be shot down this line here. I can be shot down from here. I can be shot down from Strat Reserve here. That is not a safe spot. If I can send enough stuff here, it might discourage my opponent. So again, that's a kind of a decision you need to make. But traditionally, you want to be putting stuff around here and then pushing here. And if you can tease out your opponent's stuff, so like in this case, a Myphitic there, that's quite nice, isn't it? Because now your opponent has to bring something out to shoot, something quite hefty to shoot, and then you can pop out and shoot all the things that had to shoot into that. And that's how you start generating your trades, trying to put your units in places where they're being annoying, and when your opponent comes out to shoot, you're going to be able to shoot them back down those lines. So that's like kind of the next step to be thinking about. We don't need to worry so much about screening out our backfield. Like sticking this is quite nice if you can, because then we don't have to worry about the whole more as much. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on deployment. I guess I would say that if you have, as is always the case, if you have fast moving combat stuff here, then like look, I mean, if you move a 6, your blade guard, I don't know, your blade guard move a 6 to get up onto that first floor is a 5-inch charge, right? You know, my Grey Knight interceptors can just fly on here, shoot there, and then kind of come back here 6, or push on and move block and stuff. So as always, like you do have to be really careful. Like this is obviously the map where you're starting closest to your opponent, which means that if you're playing into, I don't know, like Blood Angels with 30 Death Company, for example, they are almost certainly going to be deployed here, and then they're going to run over there, they're going to run over here, they're going to run over there, and then you're going to get charged. And there isn't really anything you can do about it. You play against an Eldari player, they will stick half their army, 2/3, 3/4 of their army on these ledges here, in this space here, and they will shoot you. And you will lose half of your army. That's just how it works. So you've got to have a plan for that. Have a plan for occupying spaces where they can land to stop that from happening, and thinking about that sort of thing. Okay. But yeah, key takeaways. This is potentially going to be a really low scoring mission. Do not let your opponent gain a foothold on the primary, especially if they're going second, because that's just game over. But if you are going first, you have to be aware that you are, as a chilled game, just going to lose on the points. So you've got to try and make something happen. The sooner the better. Probably it's an all-in turn 2 or turn 3 would be my advice. And how you go about doing that, well, it's probably going to be landing in all these areas and dealing with it. Or it could be absolutely terrifying them by knocking them off their home field and being like, you can't come and deal with me. Or it can be a fact that you've staged your army here and now you're going to push on through kind of that direction as well. Okay, so those are my thoughts on mission 3. See you for the next one. Take care.